All right. So just to run through these slides again, Jen McFarland and Stephanie Farley, and we are fans of stormtroopers. And these are the items we're going to chat about today. But jumping right into AI, the kind of the big news for 2023 obviously was AI. Before that, it's not that it wasn't in existence; it just kind of wasn't top of mind for a lot of people, particularly as it applied to business work. So in late November of 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT. By their own admission, they did not expect it to be the booming success that it was. I think at this point, it is the fastest growing new product in history. And a lot of other companies have sort of now put out the generative AI tools that they already had in use. So plenty of other companies like Google were and are working on AI for quite a long time and have these generative AI tools, but again, they didn't necessarily expect them to be the big success or to be adopted as they were. So those are things that kind of jumped into our consciousness, and lots of companies began to try to implement them into day-to-day use, both for personal use and for business use. So there are plenty of scenarios now where we can see AI being used day to day. Some folks are still working on how that integrates into their lives, but the takeaways here, the fallout, so to speak, and I do mean that positively as well as negatively, we've seen that using AI improves the speed of tasks being completed by up to 25% and the quality of tasks by 40%. The instances of deepfakes last year, are we familiar with deepfakes? I think everybody, yes. These are sort of the fake graphics that are generated by AI. Those went up by 3,000% last year. The sort of staffing instability is what we're seeing in the tech sector. There were 5,500 tech layoffs in that industry, even just in the first 2 weeks of this month. So we're still seeing companies trying to trade off the use of AI for staffing in some places, but this has been a really irregular application, and we are seeing companies hiring back. This also obviously relates back to sort of the current economic system. So I think we'll continue to see some transition and some instability in the tech sector, but Stephanie is going to talk more about that a little bit later. One of the things that did happen last year with the huge push of AI is that in the past, the estimated date for when AI could beat a human at, I'm going to quote here, every possible task was previously 2060. And then after last year's increase in technology, and kind of more notably, the increase in funding, right? Because a lot of people got really interested in AI and started putting their money in that space. It's now down to 2047. So we're seeing some big movement there. What to expect in 2024? You're going to continue to see AI expanding into every portion of your life. What you may not see is the media harping about it quite so much, but I think you're going to continue to see companies extending the use of AI and investing in it more. This is a week off, so I should have said that the release of the OpenAI ChatGPT store was 2 weeks ago now, but already there are companies that are trying to create their GPTs and putting them out for people to take advantage of and start to work with. The other thing that we're going to see that we definitely saw last year is that the models that we're working with, the AI models, are going to markedly improve. So the experience with them, the quality of the responses for generative AI, for example, are going to increase. Already there's been vast improvement in the ability of AI to work with either audio as opposed to just text input or visual input, so images. So you're going to see more and more of these things. Machine learning will continue to be applied. Data will continue to be applied, and it's going to fine tune the experiences. And as it sort of says in here, AI is better at some tasks than others, but again, this is going to even out. So where the AI is not as good at something, we're going to see more companies sort of filling in that gap, doing more training, more machine learning, and we'll see that smooth out some. So it's Mara's law that says we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate it in the long run. So again, last year, there was a lot of talk about how big a deal AI is. And I expect that that will tone down a little bit, but it's going to continue to be extremely important, I think, for businesses in particular in the next little bit. So one of the things that I did want to highlight is the impact of AI on SEO. And SEO, for those of you who aren't familiar, is search engine optimization. It is a $68 billion industry that relates to how people are finding things, right? Primarily on Google, although we have seen more of a shift to Bing. And I'm going to mention that in part because a lot of that shift to Bing has been sponsored by the fact that Bing is now being fed by OpenAI. They are business partners. And so Bing provides, at this point, does a better job of integrating with ChatGPT, which is a better AI model than what Google has. So we have seen this sort of shift towards more people using Bing. The other sort of side effect to that is that there's a lot less incentive to be using search engines in general. If you have either a ChatGPT or some other generative AI tool, it's very often easier to get better answers, easier to understand answers that combine what you would have to search through multiple SEO like responses for in order to find. So those are making the experience of searching kind of an afterthought. The scenarios that you would use search for are becoming more specific and narrow, more targeted to things that, for example, location-based searches, resource-based searches. So if you're really honing in on a specific item as opposed to getting general information, you may still be using a Google or a Bing for that, but otherwise AI is kind of a better experience. Specifically, I do want to mention too, in some studies that have been done, the finding is that for those who are, let's say, less educated or have less training or less information in a specific area, the use of ChatGPT can be a huge benefit because it's going to be more of a leveler to provide information. If you have less knowledge of a subject area, you may not necessarily, when you're looking through a Google search or the list of resources, you may not know which ones to click on. It may not be apparent to you what information or what site is going to give you the best information. You won't know that until you go through a few of them. For those who have less training and education, the important details are being delivered more easily and being absorbed better because of the simplified language that's used also by the generative AI. So the experience for people with less training and education is that it's really lifting them up even more so than those who are really trained in those specific areas. So that is a really nice benefit that's not always talked about with respect to the experience of searching. Any comments or questions about AI specifically? And welcome to, there's a few folks that joined here in the last little bit. All right, well, feel free to toss questions in the chat and we will try to address them as we go as much as possible. But for now, I'm going to jump into cybersecurity because that is always something that we should be chatting about. So kind of as a refresh, some of the bigger issues that we have seen recently, one of those is QR code vulnerabilities. Is everybody familiar with QR codes? They're the black and white, blurbs. The issue with QR codes is that in the past, they kind of floated under the radar with respect to, hacking and attacks. But it's kind of been realized that people use QR codes in a really specific and very unsecure way, which is that they pull out their phones and then they, use a QR code to open a URL. And oftentimes we don't think about what we're opening. Maybe there's certain expectations based on the context of where we see that QR code, but it can be a facilitator for actually a really negative or problematic experience. So you want to be paying attention some to the short links or the links that are being used for the QR codes. And you should typically have a preview for that. There's also some tools that will help you to test those to make sure that your QR code is legitimate. One of the tricks with that is making sure that either you recognize the domain that's being opened or that it is a legitimate domain. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. One of the other sort of more recent things that we're seeing relate to mobile and IoT security. So again, we tend to think about security for our desktops and our laptops, but maybe less so with our mobile devices. And we're probably really not thinking about it all with respect to our fridge or these other Internet of Things technologies and applications that are being used. So more and more devices. I think my stove can connect to the internet, and I don't know why, but there is potential security vulnerabilities in those spaces. I'm not necessarily concerned about that with all appliances. That's certainly not something that you have the capacity to like install antivirus for your stove at this point, but these are kind of things that are on the radar of some vulnerabilities that need to be addressed. For some of you, maybe you're a TikTok user and you've heard that you're not supposed to be. So very briefly, TikTok is a tool that comes out of China. Specifically, the Chinese algorithms that are used are questionably applied, particularly in the United States. TikTok is banned for use by the government, and so on any government machines, and also therefore any vendors or contractors who work with the government. So that's something to keep in mind if you're in a business of working with government agencies. And then finally, phishing attacks, which are still extremely popular. You want to be keeping an eye out for things like the sense of urgency in the messages. Weird grammar and tone continues to be kind of an indicator of phishing attacks. However, unfortunately, generative AI is helping all of us. Rising tide lifts those boats too. And so it's making for sometimes better quality in the phishing messages that you see. Again, you're going to want to pay attention to like language that's very urgent or calls to action. And let's talk a little bit about these suspect domains. So here's an example of a phishing attack that was aimed at WordPress administrators. So people who have WordPress sites. And what you see is that they were prompted to visit a short link, and that short link here has this destination. They used a short link, so it also obfuscated the ultimate domain. But this ultimate domain here is en-ca-wordpress.org, which, if you're familiar with WordPress, looks pretty normal because WordPress uses a similar domain for their translation or encryption for their localization information. So the correct domain is actually en-ca.wordpress. And this is where you want to be paying attention because anything that is legit should be a quote unquote subdomain, so prefixed in front of this dot. But WordPress.org is still the primary domain. And this hack was enabled by the fact that they were able to get en-ca-WordPress. They were able to purchase that domain and use that. And so quite a few people, unfortunately, fell for this. And it was a prompt to do some upgrades. And then they were, people downloaded these files. It was an issue. So here too is another example of WordPress.securityplatform.org, which looks legit, but if you really pay attention, it is this securityplatform.org domain that is the primary domain, and WordPress they've just added that on as a subdomain. So again, that is a scam. And then this is an example of WordPress.eu with the accent. That should not, believe me, it sounds obvious or it sounds tricky, but this is technically a different domain than WordPress.eu. So these are ways that that you might find domains trying to sneak in. If you are interested in improving or applying privacy and data privacy and security, particularly within your organization, I want to recommend this book by Heather Burns, Understanding Privacy. This is a book that's really helpful for taking you through the application of the GDPR. This was released by the European Union a couple of years ago. And it's also, the book is very practically written where for more of an aspect of thinking about your users and as yourself too, and the kinds of expectations that you have for your privacy and your data. The other thing to sort of mention is that while the government and legislation moves slowly, And there are no current federal laws for data privacy in the United States. Several states have put in their own laws into effect. And it is, in fact, these laws, particularly those in California and Virginia and Connecticut, which did those a little while ago, that these are a lot of the reasons why we're seeing more of the pop-ups when we visit sites about cookies, because this is starting to apply to more and more sites. If you're an organization that works with people in any of these states, then you should be thinking, or the EU, then you should be thinking about what you've done to make sure that you are applying security and privacy rules for your site. If you are uncertain about where you stand with respect to knowledge about security, you can test yourself at nationalprivacytest.org. The takeaway here is that, unfortunately, we're not getting smarter about security, but to be fair, security is also getting trickier. So, keeping an eye on these things and trying to continue to educate yourself about the latest challenges and potential threats is an important task. And along that line, these are some other tools that might help you with that process. The Privacy Policy Analyzer is a really great example of AI being used for something wonderful. This is a website where you can copy and paste any privacy policy that you find in there. So if Google's trying to get you to approve a policy, or if some site that you work with is implementing new changes to their policy, you can copy and paste that into the policy analyzer, and it will highlight anything that seems suspect or problematic. So that's a good one to have. These other two are tracking tools, or specifically, these are tools to help block tracking, or at least alert you to what tracking exists on the sites that you're using. We will share these slides out with you, so don't worry about copying these down, but they might also be useful for you as you go through your new year. Okay, sustainable tech. This is a much more common item of importance as sort of we continue to face climate change and challenges around that. We find that there are more and more people all the time who are concerned about the climate and social impacts of businesses. And with that in mind, more of these businesses and consumers are making decisions about the supply chain, the partnerships that they have, the purchases that they make, thinking about whether or not they are considering the environmental, social, and governance impacts of those businesses. So among other things, it's very much recommended that businesses pay attention to these things and that they try to be transparent and share this information with their users. One of the ways that you can do that, because there is quite a bit of work involved in understanding your impact in this area, is to work at becoming a B Corp. B corporations are certified as meeting specific standards, and they have an impact assessment that has to be undertaken every couple of years to assure their users that they are working with these specific guidelines in mind. Some of the resources that I want to highlight here, these are all North Carolina-based companies, which I understand not all of our guests today are from North Carolina, but that's a perk for us. Karma Wallet has recently released a prepaid debit card that will allow you to get benefits and then use that money to reinvest in various secure resources. They also do some other, have some other information on their website I'm going to talk about in a moment. Both Green Places and Unit of Impact are tools that will help you sort of to track your own environmental and social impacts as a business. And they can also help you build out sustainability reports or just general reporting for your end users or internally to track how successful you are in those areas. So if that's something that's important to you, those are good tools for that. So Karma Wallet, in addition to the other prepaid debit card, they also have an index of over 17,000 companies where they've done assessment based on certifications and sustainability reports and all kinds of other information to figure out where these companies rank in terms of their climate action, their sustainability, community welfare, and the diversity and inclusion within that organization. And if these are things that are important to you, if you want to, again, make more socially conscious decisions about the groups that you're working with, you can go to the website and search these companies or look to compare them like I've done here. So if it's a choice between a couple of different products and maybe you're undecided, this might be something that helps inform some of those decisions for you. It does look at this information. You can see where these users compare on all these different frameworks. And it does, do that research looking through a number of different parameters, including the UN's 13 assessment area. I'm sorry, it's 17 assessment areas. So there's a lot of really helpful information in there. And now I am going to pop this over to Stephanie to talk about the new year with respect to HR and jobs.
So as Jen mentioned, the tech sector has not been friendly in the world of employee retention. So tech layoffs are on the rise, and there's a list of New Year's updates to be thinking about as you navigate your year. 2023 had a large amount of workforce reductions, and 2024 has proven to be no exception. So as you start your year out, go ahead, update that LinkedIn profile or any of your job seeking website profiles. Make sure you've got a fresh photo, a headline, update your skills with all of the great learning that you've done throughout the past year. If you have a work portfolio or a website, make sure that that's ready to go and it's linked appropriately so that folks can find that and see some of your work in action. Also, resumes today are different than resumes in the past. You need a application tracking system friendly resume. Definitely you can have another type of resume to hand out when you're working with folks in person, but that ATS friendly resume is going to help you get filtered through the AI tools that are being leveraged in the recruiting world so that your skills are able to be matched with the job opportunities that are available. All of the major job searching programs have job alert features. And so freshening up those job alerts, making sure that you're looking for the right type of job, maybe you're looking remote or hybrid in-person types of jobs. Your job alerts can be customized based on what it is that you're looking for and where it is that you're looking to be employed. You want to make sure that your social platform presence is active and that you're engaging with companies and professional networks where you have access to job postings, where you have visibility to hiring managers and hiring leaders. If you've never met with a career coach, well, this could be your year. Career coaches offer a wealth of knowledge and can help you navigate some of the job market. There are countless e-learning opportunities, whether through the LinkedIn Learning platform, local community colleges, even company provided e-learning that can help you upskill your tech. Regardless of all of the online tools, networking in your desired industry, both in person and on social platforms, is extremely helpful. And then mentors can be a huge asset in helping to navigate different industries and then making sure that you've got someone who can proofread that new LinkedIn profile, help you as you're navigating the market. So I won't touch on all of the different tools, but I will point out there are so many different job seeking websites and tools. I personally find LinkedIn to be the most comprehensive of those tools, but there are platforms that help you find part-time jobs, that help you find completely remote jobs, that help if you're looking for executive jobs or those with startups. And so some of these different platforms, if you haven't explored them in the past, might be helpful depending on what part of the job hunt that you might be on. And all of them do provide postings and have some commonality in the job seeking, job alert, profile capacity. And so don't let that be overwhelming. Sometimes too, you can even leverage, there are some platforms that will aggregate across these platforms to aggregate different jobs, and no matter if they're on Indeed or Ladders or Diversity or LinkedIn. And so there's some different ways that you don't necessarily have to go search each one individually, but there are quite a few that help to cater to a specific population. So decide what population you are and feel free to go out and navigate, find the one that works best for you, invest in your profile, and get those alerts set up for success. Okay, and we talked a little bit about headshots. And all of you here on the call today will be future TED Talk billboard type professionals. For those billboard type things, you will want your local professional photographer to take a high quality image resolution. And so that way, when your face is up on the Jumbotron, you're not pixelated and you look your very, very best. However, we know that in this unpredictable market, that sometimes you need a headshot, and maybe you don't have a lot of time to book that appointment. So in the world of AI, there are quite a few different technologies that can help you get an AI generated headshot. And these headshots can also be at a very reasonable, affordable cost. And those headshots can be provided very quickly just by supplying a few images from your cell phone. Um, Definitely, if you had looked at AI generated images a year ago, 2 years ago, things have advanced quite a bit. So even though there are some distortions as the AI generated headshots come out, there's some correcting tools where you can quickly note if an eye's looking in the wrong direction, or maybe there's an extra finger, and they will quickly retouch and make that image look perfect for you and send it back in just a matter of hours. So what I have found for some of these AI headshot resources is that several of them are very affordable, offer a variety of images, casual and more professional, as well as changes to your attire. So there could be one more relaxed, depending if you're going into a creative job, and you want a more relaxed image. And then also they'll offer some images in a more professional kind of suit and tie capacity. So each one of these different AI resources has some different packages and pros and cons. The Studio Shot AI headshot, one of my friends did very recently, and was incredibly impressed with those images. Worked great for a LinkedIn profile, worked great for just a small bio on a company website, and really helped her so that she didn't need to navigate going in the middle of the workday, changing outfits, kids, and keeping up with all of her work. So the moral of the story is that you do need a professional photographer. So just like on with anything, if you have a picture, you're that much more likely to get a view than if there's no picture at all. So don't wait to get your headshot. By the time that you think that you need it, it's probably too late. And also, if your headshot is really dated, that too can kind of be a surprise for folks if you maybe haven't needed one in a while. Having a fresh one can be a really great way to update and freshen up for a more accurate depiction of all of your all that you have to offer in the professional world. So in this job market, we talked about those application tracking systems. And so there are some tools that can help us navigate the way that the job search is operating here in 2024. So typically there is an application tracking system that is the first line of defense after a job is posted. Applicants apply online. the technology goes through and looks for keywords, typically scores candidates for a match to the job posting. And then based on the scores, that can help a recruiter decide who they want to follow up with for an interview. So tailoring your resume, tailoring your profile so that you're more of a good match via the keywords and AI is really important. And this is very frustrating because a keyword match with project management versus program management, those are actually still two different things in the way that the scoring systems work. So there are some tools that really help with the keyword matching. So Teal is a great website that can help you tailor those resumes, and it will apply a job posting and those keywords and review against your resume. Also JobScan.io, and there's quite a few different technologies that can help with the challenge of making sure that your resume matches the posting, and that you'll have that higher percentage of getting an interview. We won't talk about all the tools here, but just know that AI is really, really embedded in the HR, in all of the HR tooling. And so there's both leveraging tools that help you fit into those categories, and then understanding that that's just part of, especially your large corporations, and their job search is really important. I was watching something with Wake Tech the other day, and they were showing the major HR systems, and then how they were leveraging AI and their percent of like the market share, and all of them were leveraging it. So I think if there's a few of the smaller companies may not be using as much of the AI tooling, but definitely any of your larger companies are typically using a software that is screening candidates for them, and then providing them with the ability to weed through based on triaging the data and putting candidates into different categories. So a couple things, AI can be your friend. I know in the job search, sometimes it might feel like it's not, but it does get smarter at recommending those jobs for you in those major job search platforms. You can refine the way that the search works for you. It will email you when there's a brand new job posted, so that you could be one of the first 10 applicants if you are that on the ball. AI can help you craft an email to a recruiter. There is some AI functionality, especially in the LinkedIn Premium, that will help generate a quick email to the recruiter introducing yourself. You can also use other AI platforms to help you with thank you notes and all of the many things that you need in this world of interviewing. Also, there are several technologies that will review your interview responses and help you practice, so that you can just put your best foot forward in that interview, and that you'll get answers on, hey, how was your tone, your cadence? Was your answer relevant? And then it can even provide what some good recommended interview responses are. So that technology exists across several platforms. The LinkedIn Premium does have an interview prep feature. A lot of folks too today are using AI, chat GPT, Bard and others to come up with interview questions to practice. Also, AI can make a bio for a company for you. So let's say that you've nailed that resume, you've got your keywords, you get that interview, and you're prepping for the interview. You want to find out information about the company. What's the information on the number of employees that they have, their primary customers. That way you can ask them really educated questions. You can ask ChatGPT to provide a company overview and be specific about different aspects that you want put into a nice summary for you that would help you articulate and craft questions or thoughtful ways that you could even phrase your answers for an interview. So, you can use that to find out what the company's values are and to navigate less of the website, because oftentimes the company websites, you have to dig several screens in to get information and they will aggregate it for you. LinkedIn does provide a really nice overview of companies that use them as a for their business, and that has everything from data on how many people did they hire in the last year, what were their average the general types of jobs that they were hiring for, and then other information on size and industry. So there's a lot of tools can really help you if you embrace it for what it is. And I originally was worried about AI and not showing up as like my authentic self. I felt like it was maybe cheating, and that was a initial falsehood. So I have worked with Jen, been to her classes, and then I have played around for myself with the technology. And really, you have all edit rights after you leverage AI, and putting your own personal touch is absolutely something that you should do no matter what technology that you use, but it can really help give you that first draft to make life easier. So we'll go to the next slide. I did just a really simple ask using Chat GPT. So Organon was a pharma company that specializes in women's pharma. And so I wanted some help crafting a cover letter. My average cover letter to write takes about an hour. Try to put some thought into it. And I was really excited about this company. I used a few other items in the prompt about what my current job title was, and that I had experience in women's health and a passion for that. And this is what ChatGPT gave me back. What I liked about this is that there were some places where it automatically suggested to fill in some of my specific data. And then also the bulleted section on the key strengths, I could change out different things from my own personal resume. I actually found this to be, with a kind of a minimal effort, a wonderful first draft, where the amount of editing that I needed to do was far less than the average like hour that I spend on those cover letters. And because I told them the persona and doing my chat GPT prompt, I actually got a better response that did actually play up on legitimate strengths that I did have that are a part of my resume, but without feeding chat GPT any personal info about myself, just the persona overall. So kind of an impressive starter if you've felt reluctant to try it out because of those same concerns. That's why I included this example here. So navigating this job market, there are so many candidates for each job posting, it might feel overwhelming. And so just wanted to reiterate that you don't need to go at this alone. Your alumni associations, professional groups, local community colleges, and really provide a wealth of resources. Some alumni associations offer a free coaching session. Professional groups may have a referral to a great coach that you could access that would help you put your best foot forward. May even have discount codes for that. For community colleges, if you are in the state of North Carolina, then those community colleges have some classes that you can take to help you update your resume, as well as some office hours. And there is a no-cost option for those that are unemployed or pending a layoff in North Carolina through Wake Tech. I apologize, I am unfamiliar with some of the other states' guidelines on community colleges, but we've got a great collaboration with Wake Tech and community and the Carolina's Women in Technology group. So, job fairs, meetup groups, industry webinars can all provide lots of great resources for you as you uh, work on applying all of those tech upgrades for your job search. And I would just encourage you to do a mix of the online resources and then get out there and do some things in person too. Um, and those can be really memorable. So if you think about your inbox and how many emails you get a day versus how many people's hands that you shake, you might remember those hands as well.
Thanks, Stephanie. So kind of an alternative when you're considering the job market is, I just wanted to mention that there's really been this noted boom of freelancers and entrepreneurs, particularly since COVID. So prior to COVID, the comparison is that since then there's been about 90% more people moving into full-time entrepreneurship or freelancing, and 130% more people doing this as a side hustle. So whether it be the flexibility of being remote or other scenarios that are like allowing people to save time, not having to commute anymore, that there's been a lot more folks who are taking advantage of some of those options and moving into territories that allow them to flex their muscles and try and do different projects, either full-time or on the side. So this consulting sort of 2.0 theory is ideally it offers more short-term assignments and more of sort of a renting structure. This might be done by companies either hiring in an interim role for a limited amount of time or a fractional role. So you find more fractional chief marketing, chief technology, chief information, like different kinds of scenarios like that, where you have somebody who steps into that role for a smaller business or a startup, just a portion of their time. And the increase of remote work obviously makes all of these easier. In the past, a lot of companies would have preferred to have been paying someone and giving them office space. And the fact that more and more companies are moving to a fully remote or at least primarily remote role means that these kind of relationships are easier to adjust to. So if you are considering, these kinds of scenarios or a different kind of work situation, this is just another one to consider. So, future of tech. Neither Stephanie nor I have any actual visibility into the future, despite our greatest wishes. But if we're looking ahead, this is actually a useful article that we found. This is coming out of McKinsey and Company, and it is an article that was actually published back in 2020 with an eye towards the next 10 years, so 2020 to 2030. And so with this, you can see these are the top 10 sort of areas that McKinsey was anticipating major trends or major movements in terms of priority and significant growth. And you can read these. The ones that I would probably highlight the most are some of the ones that have had major movement in the last 3 to 4 years. And those are some things like 5G and IoT. We have had quite a bit of movement on the chips, in part because of AI, which is number 5. The future of programming is interesting as well. To me, that ties very much back to AI, where there's more this software 2.0 concept that software is being built in a different way that's a little more abstracted out and has more support from AI and other technologies. Blockchain was a really big thing in 2020. It was on everybody's lips, and it has not boomed quite as much in the last couple of years. However, we saw at the end of last year, I think that it was the FTC has approved a new blockchain. The SEC has approved a new blockchain type. So that's something that I think is continuing to get attention and move. And there will certainly be more of this investment in the zero trust security and methods for money transfer. And then if you're looking kind of in the bio area, the movement towards new biology, next gen materials, and clean tech. Let me see. Stephanie, did I step on your slide and you were supposed to do that one and I was supposed to do this one?
No, we're good. I think
Okay.
what we're seeing in healthcare as just a side industry as well is that the healthcare has been a little bit more cautious in the entry to AI. So the really validating those models, making sure the accuracy testing use case is firm, has been an area where some industries haven't entered in quite as all in as others. We've seen like learning and HR, we're really leading the way in many aspects for some of that data, but we are seeing a really targeted turn in other industries that might be slightly later adopters. Some of that might be also due to those privacy and security changes, and then wanting to get that framework as well for the legislation of what that could look like, so that they could really scale and ensure that they're making some smart investments. So I love this visual. So as we look at the future of tech jobs, we do see top of the list anything around AI, whether it's strategy or integration. Cybersecurity analyst also is top of the list. Cloud continues to be a way to help scale data access, get access to all those great data sets, which leads the way for data scientists. So in this new age, we have more data than ever, but how do we harness the power of that? How do we take the findings and then apply that for tangible results? We are really seeing a lot around interoperability and integration. So as all of these technologies use slightly different modeling and they're in slightly different tools, how do they talk together so that everything's seamlessly integrated for the consumer? And so a lot of integration specific jobs are out there and continue to be in high demand.
Yeah, thank you, Amni, for joining. The one thing that I will mention with respect to jobs for AI, there was a lot of discussion, I think, particularly early on last year, about this, this whole new role that was being created of a prompt engineer. And we've largely seen that fall off. Companies are not really hiring prompt engineers, mostly because it's not needed. The technology has continued to become more sophisticated, better at understanding users, better at responding. And so while there's still learning to be done with respect to the best way to create a prompt, how to save your prompts, manage your prompt, share your prompt, like there's a lot around prompting and working with AIs specifically. This is where the interoperability is also related, but we're not seeing whole dedicated jobs typically to that engineering concept. That it really, as Stephanie was saying, focuses more on the data and finding good ways to collect or often smooth that data, and then ways to apply it to different AI models in terms of training the model and continuing to grow that underlying information.
And definitely, we're not saying that other tech jobs are going away, just this is where the high growth areas are.
So that is it for us. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. We're not going to throw anybody out. So if anybody would like to ask any specific questions or jump in here with any thoughts, please do let us know. For those of you who are local, I will mention briefly that Blush, which is where we originally taught this class last week, has open co-working once a month, and that next date is February 21st. So if you are in North Carolina or want to take a trip down here, please come and join us. And then briefly that if, again, you're in North Carolina, there's going to be Stephanie, you take this one.
Sure. Carolina Women in Tech, our Raleigh chapter, has a speed networking event for Galentine's. It's February 15th at Pearson's headquarters. And for this event, we'll have a speaker that will cover DE&I. There will be some light bites and sweet treats. Also great networking and the ability to come say hi and talk tech with lots of great leaders in the industry.
So any other comments or questions, please feel free to jump in.
Yes, I have a question. It's a question about one of the strategy you mentioned when you're looking for a job in the tech industry. If I remember well, it was like about I think it was like sending messages or sending like cold email to potential employer. And I was wondering about that because like everything else that you present, like upgrading your skill with e-learning, having a mentor, having a portfolio, this is all kind of clear to me. But this last thing about like contacting a company
Sure.
that you might would like to work for, do you have like any, I don't know, specific like technique or like tips or kind of a little roadmap to do that, or it's purely simply
Yeah.
go on
Um,
LinkedIn?
I
Like,
I use LinkedIn primarily, so my example will be from LinkedIn, but let's go back to that Organon example. So, for Organon, that business is a business that you can go look up in LinkedIn, and it will show you on the people tab, like who potentially you
yeah,
have
yeah.
in common that works at that company. In the example, I actually had a friend that I lost touch with in college. We were able to connect, and instead of sending that cold email, I was able to send a, "Hey, great, I haven't seen you in a while, but I would love to connect." What LinkedIn has the ability to show you some suggested content contacts based on your profile and then based on who's in your network. And then they have a first, second, and third level kind of connection logic that's in there too. So it might say, hey, maybe I'm looking up Pearson where we're having that event. Maybe I don't have a contact there, but Jen does. And so it would say, it would show that there was a second degree connection through Jen McFarland. And then I could either say, hey Jen, I'm really jazzed about Pearson as a business. I see that you've got this great connection. Could you make an introduction for me? And then we could potentially do that through the LinkedIn platform, or she might follow up and say, hey,
Hmm.
here's who I would recommend that you contact. And then I could send a message with my connection request, just telling them a little bit about how or why I'd like to connect with them. And so I primarily use LinkedIn for that, but you can also just, looking at different companies, um, there you can do some researching. Usually the primary stakeholders or the exec team is listed in on the web pages, but not like hiring managers or maybe even folks that
Yeah.
might do the same role that you're looking at. And so that's where LinkedIn has really come in and been helpful. Did that help?
Sounds, yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, and the AI function will actually draft. It can help you write the email, or like you can type your email. Hi, my name's Stephanie, and this is what I'm looking for. And then there's a rewrite with AI function as well.
Hmm.
That's what I'm using AI for these days. Like, as I said, this is my last semester and I'm writing my thesis. So sometimes there's like a data that I need to put somewhere, but I don't know how to put it there. So I just go for brainstorming and write whatever I want and then ask ChatGPT to revise it for me. And that's so helpful.
So
But
helpful.
like as you said, Stephanie, there are sometimes that I'm just like, I don't know, like get this feeling like, am I doing the right thing? Is it how I'm supposed to do it? Because I've got so many peers or like my professor telling me you should write it like for this way, this way, this way, and no AI is there for sure. And I'm like, is it ethical that I'm doing this? What do you guys think about that?
So I'm really geeked out about all things AI ethics, and I think that you are the editor in chief of everything that comes from you. And so I think that the stronger your moral compass on that, then the better it is. In the world that we are living in, your competition is using AI. And so think of it more as leveling the playing field to create your draft, and then you putting on those finishing touches making sure that one, you fact check what AI rewrote about you, and then making sure that it also reflects your persona. The Wake Tech career coaches did speak to the trend of AI in writing, and they did point out if you could not write the level of letter or correspondence that Chat GPT or any of the AI tools create for you, then you should not send it. So if you cannot rewrite without the help of AI something of that quality, then really that's misrepresenting yourself. So if it can help to enhance, but double check some of the style. Also, if there's words that you wouldn't use, it doesn't sound like yourself, those might be some things just to keep in mind. That way, when they meet you, that they have that real representation of yourself.
I see.
Yeah, I think what Stephanie said with respect to the ethical implication, if it's in a case like looking for a job where you are the ultimate decider of the information that is going out with your name on it, then absolutely that's your call, with keeping in mind, as Stephanie said, is it accurate to what you would put into your daily work, and or is this a business that is open to AI use? Obviously, if it's an assignment, then you have to follow whatever the rules are that exist there. But I do think that it's, I think it's very short-sighted. There are some educators and some institutions that are pushing back on AI, and that's fine for those that are still trying to figure out how best to implement it, who are concerned about the ethical implications, things like that. However, there's no question to me, I have kids that are 3 and 6, and when they're in high school or they're in college, they'll absolutely be using AIs to write. So this is more of a matter of looking for the right ways to implement this, being honest about it, using it to support what you're doing, to educate yourself, to speed up the process, while still being, authentic in what you're doing and how you're representing what you're submitting for yourself.
Some companies make you have a checkbox where you need to answer truthfully, did AI support your application? And so those might be ones where you don't leverage AI. So you might want to have a cover, you will need to flex because not everyone is as open to it. I think in the tech world understands and wants their workforce to be skilled in how to use these tools for success. But there are also questions that you'll need to answer truthfully, and areas where it just isn't the right choice to use it at times.
Yeah. If you're applying at Cisco, that checkbox is probably fine. If you're applying to be, a writer, maybe not.
Well, thank you guys. It was really nice. I'm so lucky that I found you guys and got a chance to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have such a diverse crowd, so many different folks from different places. And we will share the slides out a little bit later in a follow-up email. And so, yeah, I encourage you to follow Merit Digital or see if we have other future classes. We typically teach something once a month at Blush, but I think we're also going to move to offering it online once a month as well.
Great. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Nice to meet everyone.
Good luck with graduation.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye.